The hope here is that sometime tonight he will step in front of that podium as the next and the new governor.
And they tell me that still there's so much going on. Firefighters are not able to make their way out there. But as we go to the next business over, I want you to check this out. This is the O'Reilly Auto Parts.
But first, we are covering the developing news out of Paris. Within the hour, we have learned that the two terror suspects on the run are now dead.
It's the type of proactive policing the St. Louis City Police have been doing for a long time, where they focus.
Keep in mind that bullets do ricochet, and that is when we said, we're out of here.
Has a heart attack.
Well, one St. Peter's woman does not have to imagine this. It actually happened to her last week when her husband was behind the wheel. I've covered many fatal accidents, and I really have not seen one like this.
You see t-shirts and skirts and racks all knocked over.
Someone is calling people posing as a sheriff's lieutenant.
Already, we have found out that a federal judge has agreed to hear those concerns.
At least one of those men pulled a gun, pointed it at the officer. I've been walking around this White Castle. Check out what I just found.
Big win for the GOP. Now, this is a national newspaper, but it could easily be what is on the Chicago Tribune.
You see, now quite the ring to it, my goodness.
That's right.
Put that in my back pocket. Violent attacks on innocent victims, and the suspects are teenagers, is what I typically see during my live shots. The KMOV camera.
He tells me one of them was actually airlifted from this scene last night.
The White House insists American troops back on the ground in that country is not an option.
We really wanted to bring you a first-hand account of what it was like to be in the middle of all of this overnight. So News 4's Laura Hettiger started working at 8 o'clock last night. She's the only morning reporter who really spent a lot of her night on the streets in Ferguson among the crowds of people. Laura kicks off our team coverage this morning live in Ferguson. Laura.
And Claire, it was really an eye-opening night for me, because when I got to that protest, I was expecting to see so many of the images many of our viewers have grown accustomed to seeing this week. Police in tactical gear, violent riots, and really mass confusion. From what I saw, though, that was not the case.
You see, ain't nobody out here fighting. Everybody's out here for Michael Brown. Everybody's kind of running around doing their own thing, but they're not angry. Last night they were angry and they were ready to they're ready to fight.
From fighting on Wednesday to a sense of freedom on Thursday.
I thought it was going to be violent. I expected police officers. I expected like it was the night before, but it's not like that. It's much more peaceful.
A parade of cars, loud honking, and large crowds at night might not seem all that peaceful to you, but it sure is to all of these folks in Ferguson.
The protesters are the ones that are keeping the peace, that are controlling traffic, and that's how it should be done.
In the entire 3.5 hours I reported through the protest, there was only one moment that I and everyone else I talked to was scared. We just so happened to catch it on camera.
I live in Greenville now, and I work in Kirkwood.
3 distinctive pops sound so familiar to so many in this area. Luckily, turned out to be a false alarm.
That was firecrackers, everybody.
Protesters tell us that they are sorry about the looting and the damage to all the businesses, but they also say the only reason all this is able to happen is because of a change in the way Ferguson is being policed.
People were just saying thanks for allowing us to speak and without fear of tear gas and some of those things, and so I want them to speak, and I want to hear what they say, but I also ask them we have to do it in a peaceful way.
That is Captain Ron Johnson, now the man in charge of all of this, and he is going to have a busy day. Why? Because county police just told me there were 5 incidents overnight in which they could not respond. I'll explain more of that coming up at 6:30.
Laura Hettiger tracked down the head of transportation to find out if your kids are safe on the school bus. Laura.
And Jasmine, this is exactly where that bus fire happened. You can see all the damage it did to the grass around me. So yeah, you can tell this was a major fire. But get this, I found out the bus involved is only 3 years old, and it had been inspected and approved to be on these roads as recently as last Tuesday. So how in the world could this happen just 2 days later?
As far as we know, flames were coming out of the bottom of the bus.
And
within seconds, this happened. Flames under the bus, flames shooting through it, and a plume of black smoke billowing into the air.
Right now we're working on determining, what exactly happened, what exactly occurred.
Tammy Webb is the head of transportation for VIC, a nonprofit spinoff from the desegregation program. She says this bus passed an inspection this year, and just Tuesday, it was approved to be on the road. I asked her, based on this video, should all 240 Durham buses in their fleet be re-inspected?
It seems odd that if it was approved on Tuesday, then this happens on Thursday.
Well, again, until we determine what was the situation, what exactly caused the situation, then we'll take a look at what occurred.
Now it's up to Durham bus officials to go through the shell of this bus and figure out how this happened.
I would hate to speculate on what exactly occurred because, again, at this time we don't know.
A lot of unknowns remain in this investigation, especially just how much time passed between when the last student was dropped off and when those flames ripped through this bus. I'll explain why that spokesperson can't give me an answer to that, and also what the driver heard right before that fire happened, coming up all new on News 4 at 6. Reporting live in North St. Louis, Laura Hettiger, News 4.
What we often can't report is the victim's story. Laura Hettiger joins us live from the Central West End. And Laura, you cover a lot of crime, but today's story a little different.
I sure do, Andre, and in fact, I've covered 58 deaths just this year, and I keep count of that number for a couple of reasons. One, to better track crime and crime trends, and two, in hopes of following up with those families, and that's what I'm doing today with the story of Kenneth Watkins. I need to tell you, it was actually a police officer who told me about this 22-year-old father who should just be waking up for his final day of college classes. Instead, I wound up meeting his mother, who told me that his life was cut short right inside this apartment building, all because of senseless gun violence.
And I just always told him to be careful, just be careful out there because people are crazy. And his thing is, I'll be okay, Mom.
We first told you about Angela Watkins' son Kenneth in early July. Instead of sharing happier times like his graduation from Kirkwood High School,
the crime of murder is shaking up.
Our cameras brought you here to the 5500 block of Pershing in the Central West End. This is where he was murdered.
Wasn't even out in the streets. He was in his apartment.
Someone killed Watkins one day before he was supposed to move out of his first apartment.
My last weekend. I say, yeah, this is your last weekend here.
Angela tells me she remembers almost everything about that last weekend of June, especially the first thing doctors told her.
They said there was nothing they can do.
Angela is now raising Kenneth's son, her grandson. She says Kenneth's death is even more unfortunate because he was just months away from becoming a police officer. Something even more remarkable because one of his best friends says he was a former gang member.
That was one of our main connections, was the fact that we both used to be in the streets. He was a Blood and I was a Crip, and it was kind of weird that we actually were able to come together and be friends.
Police, family, and friends also say what really stood out about Kenneth was his drive to make his life better.
That was his motivation as well, taking care of his mom, his son, his sister, and that's what he always talked about. I gotta do this, I'm gonna make it.
And unfortunately for all the people this future police officer could have touched and helped, Kenneth is now made into a crime statistic. He is homicide number 49 out of 90 in the city of St. Louis, and city police tell me there have not been any arrests in this case. Live in the Central West End, Laura Hettiger, News 4.